Clickers, clackers.
Clackers.
Clackers, crackers.
Clacker.
I was going to do the whole hardly newer thing. Clacker, hardly newer. That doesn't really work.
As somebody who grew up with a cow named ground beef, no, it was not weird at all.
That's not that far off.
Now, it would be weird to eat my dogs, but not other pets.
But not your pet.
Not quite as sporting as the other.
Hey folks, it's Kevin Price here with the Smokey Guys, and you are being treated to a heck of an episode tonight. We've got Mr. C.R. Parsons.
The other Smokey guy?
Yeah, because you're about to smoke.
Well, I am. But
And you've been smoking all afternoon.
I have been.
Yeah.
It's been one of those days.
But I am super excited, and I've always this is like the second time I've ever said this on a podcast, that I'm really excited about our guest today.
I understand the point.
So we have on one of our really, really good friends, Mr. Nick Parsons.
How's it going, guys?
Great.
Good, Nick. How are you?
I'm doing great. Getting ready to light up here.
Well, for those of you who don't know Nick, we've mentioned Nick several times on this podcast.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've
It's
come
all
up.
negative, don't worry.
I figured.
You've come up. Nick is an amazing guitarist and singer, and we
A
love
barbecuist.
barbecuist
If you will.
extraordinaire.
That's true.
He smokes many things. Cigars, brisket.
Hey, if you can smoke
You know.
it, I've smoked it.
Right. Raccoons.
I mean,
all of it.
we don't discriminate.
We've had smoked raccoon. I'm not joking.
Have
when
you
I say
really?
that. Yeah.
Yeah, we have.
We play a show every year for the governor of Arkansas, or the last 2 years we
Right.
played, and they literally bring in, like, I can't remember how many 1,000 pounds of raccoon, and then they smoke it.
That's the official meat of the state of Arkansas.
Right? I think so.
Well, it's called the coon supper.
It was either that or squirrel, I think. It was the,
Yeah.
No, that's Mississippi because you got the Mississippi Squirrel Revival.
that's true. You know the what do they call it? I think it's the World Squirrel Championship Cook-Off. Though happens in Fayetteville.
Oh,
Every
really?
year. Yeah, it happened maybe a month ago.
I did not know that was a thing.
Yeah, they.
I'm surprised
I
our
don't
band
remember
hasn't
all
played
the.
it.
I know.
No
Right?
kidding.
I got a hook. I got the guy who started the whole thing. It's a
Ah,
buddy of mine. But they, I guess, you go out and hunt your own for a lot of these guys when they bring it in, and then they do a competition, and they have judging like it would be a barbecue contest. But
Oh, how
it's a
funny.
squirrel contest.
oh, how funny. But now, so if you can just go hunt your own squirrel, doesn't that mean you could theoretically cheat the contest by getting the perfect squirrel?
I mean, I guess if you hunted enough squirrels that you got the perfect squirrel.
Well, you could raise it.
Probably true. Then you got to serve your pet. Is that
Right.
weird?
Not at all.
Okay. Just,
as
Depends on where you grew up.
depends on where
Someone
you
who
grew up. We are
Mississippi,
talking Arkansas. No problem.
as somebody who grew up with a cow named ground beef, no, it
Yeah,
was not
okay.
weird at all.
You know, that's not that far off. Oh, that's fun.
Now, it would be weird to eat my dogs, but not other pets.
But not your pet squirrel. No, yeah, the story behind the squirrel cook-off is absolutely hilarious, man. So I met a guy years ago. He's become a buddy of mine now, but he's originally from California, moved out to Arkansas, embraced everything it means to be an Arkansas redneck, right?
Okay.
And the local news station had some kind of a call out, and they said, "Hey, we're looking for the most redneck person you know. Get us someone's information," right? So Joe gets a call from the news station, and they said, "Hey, you've been nominated as the most redneck person people know." And he's like, "Well, that's awesome." They said, "Hey, we want to come out and interview you." So they come out and interview him. He lives on local property, and he's giving them a tour of the property. And really, he's a comedian. He's an MC. He's man of many talents. He's got an absolutely awesome podcast too. But he's giving them a tour, and they were talking about him being redneck. And he goes, "Yeah," because we throw the World Championship Squirrel Cook-Off every year, which was not a thing.
Oh.
They pulled that out of his ass. Can I say ass?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh
You're
yeah,
good.
yeah. You say whatever
I
you
didn't
want.
know if we're ready.
No, we've had Boston Mike on here. You can say anything.
We're safe.
Anything.
We're
Yeah,
good.
Yeah.
So he goes, yeah, we throw the World Championship Squirrel Cook-Off every year. And they're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. We'd love to come to that. He's like, man, I'd love to have you. He closes the door and they drive away and he goes, shit, they're not going to throw the World Championship Squirrel Cook-Off. So we called up a bunch of buddies and sure enough, a few months later, they put it on and they've been doing it every year since. It's been going on 5 or 10 years.
Oh, wow.
But
That's awesome.
That is hysterical.
yeah, pretty fun. Pretty fun.
Kevin, you have to remember to
It's the
breathe.
whiskey. Yeah, I think it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
You have to remember to breathe,
That
not
first-
just smoke.
Hint of cold air.
Yeah.
Dude, 3 weeks. We have recorded right here the last 3 weeks in a row. And 2 weeks ago, it was so hot that we had the fan going. And when we turned the fan off so that it didn't mess with the audio, it got hot. 2 weeks ago, it was almost perfect. And suddenly this week, it's chilly.
I mean, it's chilly, like it's wet chilly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's why it feels so cold inside, or has felt so cold inside all day today, because there's so much moisture in the air.
We probably still have some humidity hanging around from the last few weeks, and
Yeah.
then it just got tossed in the deep freeze.
Yeah. Well, I know we are all smoking the same cigar tonight. Well, we're all smoking the
Yeah.
same brand and make of cigar. We're not smoking one cigar.
Not puff.
No, not like the Dye, whatever that one was. Dye American, whatever it was called.
We'll see it in the future.
It'll be in a future podcast. Yeah, there's a rather large cigar that, yeah.
Oh, that's an understatement.
Yeah. You have a
And-
podcast with
It's
10
the
guys
size
just passing it around.
small summer sausage.
Yeah.
And also very different than the song you sang the other night about smoky weed with Willie. So
That's true.
we're not puff passing these. These are all gifts from producer Kevin. Kevin, what are we smoking?
RomaCraft Wonderlust.
Tell us more about it.
I picked them up and had them shipped from Germany. So RomaCraft makes these, and they you can only buy them in Germany.
There you go. So these are a specialty cigar. Since you can only get it in Germany, it is leading into Oktoberfest week here in Tulsa. So we thought it was an appropriate time to break these out.
Yeah, they used to be called Wonder Wall. Then the wall came down.
Then the wall
Now it's
came
Wanderlust.
So anyway, here's Wonderlust.
Yeah. So from now on, when we cover anything, here's another version of Wanderlust.
That's good. That's very good.
Yeah, these are great cigars.
Oh.
Nice to have you import those for us. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, very, very nice. Very nice.
I didn't realize he was an importer among his many
Yeah.
talents.
He is. He
Importer,
is.
exporter.
He's producer.
What is it?
Mandalay Enterprise.
Mr. Vandelay, what is your Art Vandelay over there? What's his? What else are you into?
That's great.
Well, Nick, tell us about you. Tell us where you came from. How'd you grow up?
Wow. So I was spent the majority of my young life back and forth between Texas and California.
Okay.
Family had a cattle ranch right outside Waco, and then Southern California. Mostly my parents were out there, and I went back and forth for quite a while. Ended up doing college out in California. Met my wife out in California,
Very cool.
and then pretty much immediately after getting married, we said, "Man, I want to go back to Texas." So got a job out there with the intention of, hey, let's just save up enough money to move back out. Moving across the country is not cheap.
Right.
So worked for a company there for a couple of years, and then they had an opening in Tulsa, in an office that we had here in Tulsa. And my boss had kind of known that eventually I was going to move back to Texas. He said, "Hey, tell you what, let me get you to Tulsa.
Yeah.
You give me at least a year there, and I'll pay you to move to Tulsa, and then you go to Texas or do whatever you want to do." So we moved
You
out
got a better offer than most people.
I mean,
Most people get sent to Tulsa, not get paid to
right?
go to
I know,
Tulsa.
right? No, it was about as good of a deal as you can make, because they got us 90% of the way there, and then we still had family in Texas, and we go down and visit them and realize, man, I think I like Tulsa as much as I like Texas.
Oh yeah.
So we've stuck around, and we've been here for, I guess, coming up on 17 years now.
Oh wow.
So
Quite a while.
Yeah.
Quite a while.
Not 1 year turned into a lot longer.
oh, I know,
Yeah.
a lot longer. And then that was the funny thing is my boss is like, well, you got to give me a heads up when you're getting ready to go. I'm like, I'll give you a heads up if I get ready to go. So I worked in television broadcast for a long time. So when I was in California, I worked as a film and TV editor in LA.
Okay.
For a while. That was my major in college was film and TV and broadcast production.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Not on the acting side, but on the production side.
Okay.
So I did a lot of audio, a lot of video work. And then worked so television broadcast was the company. We operated Outdoor Channel, Sportsman's Channel, a bunch of the hunting, fishing, off-road, stuff like that, which oddly enough at the time was based in California. It doesn't seem like those would fit.
Yeah.
Right.
They got relocated to Denver years later.
It's like there's a section of California this side of the mountains that is much more.
Yeah, although this
than-
is in basically San Diego.
Oh, really?
So not where you would, not the sportsman capital of California.
Yeah.
Definitely, we spent some time hunting this year in Nevada's up in kind of, I guess it was south central California is where we were. But we'd do mule deer hunting and stuff up way up in the mountains. And college, buddies and I would go for, weeks on end and go rough it and hunt. And it was a blast. And now you tell people you do that in California, they think you're crazy. But yeah, so did that for a while and then came out here and continued to work for that company for a long time. So I think my last year with them was 2019.
Wow.
And then jumped into barbecue full time after that. So I always had a passion for barbecue, had that instilled in me at a young age from Texas. And California actually does have a pretty robust barbecue culture. It's just not the same kind of barbecue culture.
Right. It's more that open pit. What do they call that?
They call most of them a Santa Maria, but they're
Santa Maria. That's what I was thinking.
It's a kind of a cowboy style. So California was settled. Mexican vaqueros, cowboys. Were the ones that were running a lot of the ranches up there. So that kind of culture of cooking over open fire and big cuts of beef and stuff like that, kind of permeated California. So to this day, it's funny how closely California and Italy is as far as climate and culture and food and all that kind of stuff, because they raise a lot of the same kind of stuff. But that type of barbecue is even prevalent in Europe, like in Italy.
Interesting.
Because you have a lot of cattle and a lot of lamb and stuff like that. So it had an interesting take on both barbecue culture. It really made me kind of fall in love with managing fire and cooking for big crowds of people and things like that. So my wife and I ran a catering company for a handful of years on the side. And taught barbecue classes and stuff like that, and we jumped into barbecue full time about 3 years ago, and just been ate up there since.
So, I know I grew up in a family with 6 kids, and so when we cooked dinner, we cooked for a family of 8.
Yeah,
and you cooked a meal. After cooking for big crowds like that, can you go back to cooking for a family?
You've eaten at my house. Seriously. I don't ever cook for anybody less than like 100 people.
Yeah, I know you. Yeah, every time you cook, it's for 35 people. Whether it's 2
we
or
love
20.
leftovers. Let me put it that way.
Okay. Because I know I'm that way anymore. When I barbecue, if I'm going to fire up the grill, I'm going to get some nice good coals. So I pull enough meat out of the freezer.
Hate wasting fire.
To work for a week.
Yeah.
And I'll refreeze it if I need to and reheat it back up. Sous vide's great for that.
Yeah.
So I do the same thing. I wondered for somebody that's catered and done those big meals, if you can ever get back down to small. Because
I think you can get down to smaller, but in the barbecue, quote unquote, in the barbecue world, there's nothing small. Unless you're grilling a steak or cooking some chicken thighs or something like that. If you're cooking a brisket, if you're cooking a pork butt, you're cooking for 15 people, whether you have them there or not. So we've got real creative with leftovers. We do a lot of freezing. We reheat with sous vide or whatever we need to do. Which I need to get better about. We'll use the leftovers that we have, but I'll freeze half of it and eat on them for a week.
Right.
And then I'll come back out 8 months later, like, oh, I just cooked a brisket. And I got like 12 pounds of frozen brisket in the freezer.
Still here.
Pull that. But no, it's you end up having quite a bit of food. But that's why I think why barbecue is so popular for feeding the crowds. Is because it's just you're not cooking and flipping one piece of chicken at a time like you're a feast.
Yeah. And that low and slow it takes some paying attention to, but not as much as if you were literally flipping hamburgers for
sure
300 people.
You know, the benefit though is it's a lot more forgiving. So one of the ways, especially when we catered, we were kind of known in Tulsa at the time as kind of the cowboy cooks, because we were the only ones who were really doing kind of that Santa Maria live fire style barbecue. Everything else was, you know, pit barbecue, which I have a big trailer pit that's got two big offset smokers. It looks like a double barrel gun kind of thing going down the road. It's great. And we'll cater on that sometimes, but we did a lot of open fire, live fire stuff.
Yeah.
And that's actually a lot harder to cater on because you're doing, you know, 150 chicken thighs, or you're doing 60 tri-tips or something. And most of those chicken thighs are a little more forgiving, but tri-tips, you know, you got about 5 or 10 degrees and you overcook that sucker. Nobody wants it.
Right.
So it's a lot of flipping, it's a lot of moving, it's a lot of temping. But traditionally, you know, barbecue, again, one of the reasons it works for bigger crowds is it's so forgiving.
Yeah.
That, you know, that thing can be done for an hour.
Yeah.
And as long as you're kind of paying attention to it, like, it's not going to get ruined.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned tri-tip because I spent a lot of my high school years moving around the country. My dad, we were always all over the place, and so whenever I went to high school in El Centro, California, out there, that's when I was
we
first.
had that connection.
Yeah, I was first introduced to tri-tip out there because you never saw it out here growing up. That was just not a cut of meat that, you know, just like going to, whenever I used to go to South Carolina originally, I couldn't find a ribeye in a grocery store.
Yeah.
It was all pork.
Right.
Pork and chicken.
Yeah.
There was literally almost no beef.
Yeah.
And tri-tip was that way. You didn't find it out here until what, like maybe 7-8 years ago. You started really seeing it more prevalent.
So I'll tell you, and I'll toot my own horn on this, whether it's true or not, I don't know. But, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I'm telling the truth. So that's all.
Well, the 3 people watching are going to hold you to this.
Hold me to it. So when we first moved out here, I mean, we were, again, used to cooking a lot of tri-tip.
Right.
When you do a community barbecue, and, you know, when we were cooking in California, you cook 70, 80 tri-tips.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of meat. So we came out here, we couldn't find tri-tip, that drove me nuts. And I dealt with it for about a year or two, and like we'd go down to Texas, and I'd hit up some butchers, and I'd have them, you know, butcher it out of the sirloin or whatever. We couldn't find it here, so I started going around, especially when we started catering. I started going around to every single butcher shop that I could find in Tulsa. And there's a number associated with the butcher cut sheet that a tri-tip has, and every cut sheet has it. So, you know, and if people are kind of unfamiliar with me, you know, there's a reason why, like a New York strip and a KC strip and all this, all the same cut. Like, it's just a different marketing term, right?
Right.
So tri-tip has 3 or 4 different kinds of names, but all those cuts have a specific number that they're given. So I would go in and I'd say, I'm looking for this, and they're like, we don't have it, so can you order it? And they're like, we'll have to check. And I was like, great. And then I'd drive down the road to the next butcher. I'm like, can you order it? We'll have to check. Okay, great. And I would go every single week, and I'd make the round of the butchers, and I'd say, hey, if you can get them in, I'll buy in everything you can get. So they started getting them in because I just show up and buy them.
Yeah.
And eventually, like, it kind of, and again, like, I don't, popularity and YouTube and all that stuff, you know, probably definitely didn't hurt either. But there's probably a circuit of 15, 20 butchers I go to every couple of weeks and will buy up tri-tips from them because they could order them. And then when they knew they were going to sell them, they didn't mind ordering them.
Right.
But I would only buy 3, 4, 5, and they'd order in 7 or 8. So they'd throw them in the case. And they knew, like, hey, if I came back in a week, I'd still buy it. But eventually, I started seeing them in the cases.
People were starting picking up on it.
Well, and as we catered them too, like, people were like, "What is this?"
Yeah.
So we'd tell them what it is, and we'd
Right.
tell them how to cook it, and they'd go and buy it. So I think, you know, again, we'll toot our own horn, but realistically, I think us and the internet and everything else kind of started bringing in the popularity of some of these cuts that you couldn't find earlier.
Yeah, I find with, like, you talk about YouTube and all that stuff. I think Food Network had a huge hand in all that. Once they started seeing, oh, well, you know, people would travel places, taste something, like it, not have a clue what it was, and they come back. But then they're watching these shows, they're like, well, you know, I think it did it a great service because now you can go across the country and find cuts of meat and stuff that you couldn't get before.
For sure.
And I mean, let's say when my parents first moved to South Carolina, it was like
01, 02.
Yeah, right. No, because we lived out there. We've lived out there 3 times when I was a kid. But then whenever they moved out there, after I was out of high school, so it was probably like 95, they moved out there.
Right.
94, 95. Even then, I'd go to the grocery store. We'd go out for Christmas, go to the grocery store. Couldn't even find a simple ribeye. And so what I would do is have Dad tell the butcher, hey, order in a whole ribeye. I'll buy the whole thing. And so, and I did. And so I would go out there to the grocery store, go back and cut them in front of them and show them how to cut a ribeye. Because they had no clue. And they're just like, what is this?
Well, most of those grocery stores, they're not butchers; they're meat cutters,
Right.
And that's not a disservice. They would tell you the same thing. Like,
Yeah.
Butcher went to school, is certified, like knows that entire process, can break an animal down, no problem.
No matter what animal it is.
For sure, like
Yeah.
it's the same, similar process for most of the stuff. A meat cutter is someone who gets primal cuts of meat, so a whole ribeye, a whole this, a whole that, and they know how to cut them down into like, home cuts. Here's a ribeye steak, here's a KC strip, whatever. But it came from, a 15, 20 pound piece of meat, not a 400 or 500 pound carcass.
Right.
It was just odd seeing people out there that really had no idea.
Yeah.
They'd never seen one. And I'm going, how have you never dealt with?
Yeah, you would think that'd be like one of the most popular.
You know where
cuts.
the loin is, and
Oh.
the chuck in, and
Carolina's-
they have no clue.
Carolina's pig country, folks.
It is big country.
But then over
Carolina's
time,
big
again,
country.
I think it was, a lot of this popularity of shows and whatnot. You couldn't even hardly order a steak in a restaurant.
Yeah.
really.
So,
Because
yeah,
it was
other than
all-
a pork steak. Weird, yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Well,
and then
if
over
you-
time, you saw them start to slowly introduce.
Yeah, if you
Stuff
did
and-
order one, it was going to be well done.
Well,
'Cause
they-
there was something
Yeah.
about the South that they liked their meat well done.
I still think that's probably semi-prevalent too.
I think it's a lot
Is it
less than it
getting
used
better?
to be. Oh,
I
yeah.
know Charleston's much better. They're kind of a culinary mecca.
They've become
out
a
there.
culinary mecca for sure.
and,
yeah.
and they've done a much better job there because used to I could go in and order a steak, yeah, it was just awful. One, it was cut wrong,
Yeah.
and two, it was cooked wrong. So it was like, this is just not going to be a great experience. So you just never did it.
Yeah.
Now every time I've been out there, it's been great.
Because I know even in Oxford, we've always had decent restaurants that had decent chefs, but I can remember ordering, after I learned to eat steak
Right.
at a true medium, going in there and ordering a medium and getting a well done steak.
Yeah.
Because they just weren't used to doing it. It didn't make
Yeah.
sense for them. It was out of their habits.
It ain't done.
Well, I think a lot of that probably true is the same thing with the internet and TV shows and that type of
Mhm.
stuff. Is people are realizing, oh, there's these things that you can get. And I'm sure, as the distributors got bigger and bigger and they could bring in more stuff and they could send it across country easier, that, over time it became natural to get stuff that you weren't used to.
True.
A lot of the North Carolina barbecue places that I'm familiar with and that I know guys that run and own and work and that kind of stuff, they still source hogs from the local farmer.
Right.
Like
Sure.
they're not calling up Cisco and saying, I need a whole hog.
No.
They're calling up the
No.
farmer and saying, I need 600 hogs this year. Can you make sure you got me covered?
Right.
Yeah. Yep. And they cook whole hog. I
Oh, yeah.
I love going to a place that cooks whole hog.
The funny thing about whole hog too, and this is true of anything barbecue in general, but whole hog is a massive passion project for these guys, and a lot of it's just so cultural. They've been doing it for 200 years, and originally that was out of necessity because that's the animal they could get,
Right.
and that's the only way they could cook it. That's the only way they could sell it and store it and everything. But cooking a hog whole is about the most inefficient way you can cook a hog.
Right.
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 It's like not every single, there's probably 7 or 8 groups of cuts on that hog that all need to be cooked a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Like the shoulders and the hocks and the rears essentially, or the back shanks. They need to go super high temp. Not necessarily cooking high temp, but like they need to get to a high temp before they're done. But yet you got the ribs and the loins and stuff like that, other sections of them that don't need to go that high.
Right.
And they shuffle around the coals and they move stuff and they handle different times and everything to balance all that out. Where in most barbecue, like you butcher those pieces out and you cook all the shoulders or all the butts in one section, you cook all the loins in another section, and it does make it easier. But there's so much tradition behind cooking whole hog, right?
Yeah.
That they just say, screw the easier thing. This is how we do it. And this is how we've always done it.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got an art to it that, I'm sure that's all they know, and they do it really, really well. When you've had a really good whole hog, because there's guys that cook it poorly.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
But when you got a really, really good whole hog, someone's really got. I mean, you're not talking years; you're talking decades.
Yeah.
of experience.
Generational
Yeah, for sure.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah, the first time we ever went to a restaurant that cooked whole hog was Scott's Barbecue in South Carolina, and this is long before the Food Network made him famous.
Right.
But yeah.
Now, is this when his dad was still running?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is
Before Rodden took it over.
Yeah. And obviously before Rodney moved into Charleston.
Mhm.
This is out at the old place, and
Right.
man, it was just such a unique experience of going in there, and there, I was like, just walk us through it. You just give us whatever you're going to give us. You feed us
Right.
the way you're going to eat, because that's the way we're going to enjoy it.
Right.
But yeah, watching it and getting to watch those guys work with those hogs, it's just amazing. It's like, wow.
I had the opportunity a few years ago, and I've toured some of those places. Going through the Carolinas, and we hadn't talked. We talked before about me being a musician. You hadn't really talked about me playing music across the country with different guys, and was really super blessed to be able to do that for a lot of years. But and we walked in a lot of those barbecue places as you would tour through, and you'd walk through the kitchens and hang out with the guys, and give them tickets to the show, and they give you tours and stuff like that. But was the first time I ever saw one from start to finish was actually in Gulf Shores, and it was probably only, I don't know, 6 or 8 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And the owner of Skylight Inn, Sam, was down there, and he was kind of one of the celebrities that was doing the appearance. And I was cooking with another friend of mine, and she was doing kind of some demonstrations and stuff. And we got there early to set up, and they were building their hog pit for this big food festival they were doing. And I watched them from start to finish prep this thing, and it was mind-blowing, the steps that would go to it, and his crew, and how they would handle stuff, and how they'd move stuff around. And they're sleeping there all night long.
Oh yeah.
I mean, literally, they got a lawn chair out there, and they got a big old burn pit, and they're not dumping bags of charcoal.
No.
They have 55-gallon barrels. A lot of times they've welded 2 of them high, and they pile it completely full of hickory wood, so 10 feet high of hickory wood, and they burn it all down. Got a big cutout on the bottom of the barrel, and they just take coals and they shovel the coals, and then they put more wood in it, and they burn it down, and they shovel the coals, and they do that all freaking night long.
Yeah.
They're throwing salt on it and dripping it in vinegar and mopping it and flipping it and doing this thing, and you really realize like what an art it is to moving that stuff around and reading it, and they're knocking on it and they're poking it with different things, and they're figuring out exactly when it's done, and then watching him break that thing down. And I said, hey, build me the perfect bite. And he went in and he pulled some off the butt, and then he got some of the the butcher's cut there, which is basically the bacon.
Right.
That's not bacon, string bacon that now. And then he took some of the chicharron, the skin that they crisp up, and he built me the perfect bite. And to this day, I still think that was the best bite of barbecue I've ever had in my life.
Wow.
And it was only seasoned with salt and apple cider vinegar.
That was it.
Yeah.
I mean, there wasn't, some fancy off-the-shelf barbecue rub. There wasn't any secret sauce. He literally had a box of kosher, diamond kosher salt and a big old, 1 gallon thing of apple cider. He had a case of 1 gallon things of apple cider vinegar. They popped a hole in the top, and they're just shaking it over the entire thing. And that was the only thing it was seasoned with. And it was still, to this day, the best bite of barbecue I've ever had. Because it was just cooked absolutely perfectly.
That's awesome. That is very cool.
Well, you touched on it a little bit. Let's talk music.
Yeah.
So, is it you come from a musical family? Is it something that you came upon just naturally yourself?
Yeah. So Dad was a recording artist for ABC Universal back in the day, and he originally started out. I'm betting the year was somewhere in the early '60s, maybe '64, '65. He would have graduated high school. It's probably '65. And he toured with 4 Lads.
Okay.
And this was a couple years after the 4 Lads started really getting it big. So they were I think they'd kind of hit their peak and were kind of coming down on it. He got picked up as a vocalist and toured with the 4 Lads. And then when that kind of got disbanded, and they had some pretty big hits too. I'm sure people probably aren't old enough here to listen to this, but they had that song like "If Istanbul was Constantinople," like that was their, they had great tune. And then it was made popular again by the Muppets. But they had that and a number of ones. So they would do the club singings, and they were all Italian. Not my dad was. My dad was the Central Texas boy. All of them were Italians, dapper in the suits. And the story. And my dad was a story. He was an entertainer and a storyteller, but he would tell stories of them touring New York. And one night they couldn't get a hotel, and they ended up staying in a brothel in a really, really bad area of town. And the ladies of the evening basically like sheltered them and like, hey, make sure like, hey, don't go down this street. Like, hey, we're gonna take care of you guys. Like,
That's
this is not
funny.
the area you want to be in, type of thing. And they, I mean, without doing any hanky panky, like they, you know, they stayed in the brothel for a few days while they were doing the shows, and got put up by the ladies. And so he had tons of stories. So he after that they kind of disbanded. He became a recording artist for ABC Universal, and he cut some albums. The album his primary album, his first big album was the entire backup band to him was Three Dog Night's backup band.
Oh wow!
So he had one official album and then a handful of demos that I got piled up in my garage that never went anywhere because whatever record label did the thing.
Yeah, that's the way record labels are.
Right, and he got some airplay, but he was in the series like when Cat Stevens was coming up, and and John Denver was there, and all those guys, James Taylor, and he was probably maybe 3 or 4 years after they were big, and he was kind of billed as the guy that was like, this is going to be the new Cat Stevens and John Denver.
Gotcha.
And then right before his album was due to like have the official launch, they had a shakeup, and it got shelved. So it was quietly released later on to like
no fanfare,
right? But I mean, again, it's
no
like
promotion.
Three Dog Night backing it up and the whole thing. So I mean, it's still a hell of an album.
Yeah,
and I listen to it pretty regularly just because it's so damn good. So that was the family I grew up in. So he did that. He toured around for a while. He moved off to Hawaii as they would do back in there when their career got shanked, and got high on a beach for about 4 years, and played the nightclub scene. Opening up for Tiny Bubbles and all this stuff. So he did that for years, and then moved back to the mainland. Kind of trying to restart his career. Never really took off again. But he played the nightclub scene for 30 years in California.
Wow!
So that was kind of what drew our family out from the Texas side to the California side. Was Dad being out there? That's where he met Mom. So there's kind of that draw back and forth with that. So it came from that family that just had a history, and his dad and his grandparents were musicians, and would play on the front porch all the time. And they kind of gave him shit for years, being the guy that wanted to go be a rock star and move out of the country, and then he actually kind of did it for a while. So, a little screw you to them, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the family I grew up in. So he never pushed me into music, but there were guitars around the house everywhere. Every corner had a guitar, lining up on it.
Yeah.
So. He waited until I was plucking around and kind of showing some interest on my own, and then he'd show me a chord, and then would disappear for about a month and see if I stuck with it. And I'm kind of trying to do the same thing with my daughters now. Just see, gauge the interest level on it, because I never want to be that parent that pushes them to the point where they never want to do it again.
Right. Well, they say that's the way to do it, because who is it whose podcast we listen to? Walking the Floor.
Chris Shiflett.
Shiflett. He talks about he so badly wants his kids to be into music.
Right.
And every time he tries to push them that direction, they push back twice as hard.
Yeah.
And he's talked to so many different artists about that on his podcast. And some of them have grown up in musical families, and a lot of them that really love it say the exact same thing you just did. That it was always there.
Right.
We weren't encouraged or discouraged.
Right.
It was just there, and when we showed interest was showed back.
Right. And
that's what led them to it, and
yeah.
I find that interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something to be said for I don't know if I've never looked into it. There may be science behind it, but I do feel like music's in your blood.
I agree.
I don't know if it's literally something in your blood and your DNA that like makes you more attuned to it, or I don't know if it's just genetically, like you can carry a tune and your fingers are more limber or whatever it is. But most people that I know that's a musician, there's a history of musicians somewhere in there, and it does happen, but rarely do I know very many people that just stumbled into it and there's never any history there.
Right.
And it's great if you can.
Yeah.
It's just hard to jump into it when you don't have that. But I mean, I grew up with Mel Bay books lying around the house, and
right.
Reading. Looking black and white pictures of trying to figure figure chords out and everything.
I remember Dad having those little the chord books for like mandolin or something like that. So I whenever he was off doing whatever, I would grab out his mandolin and sit down and start working on and I don't play it
Copy
now,
board.
but yeah, at the same time, it's like, yeah, it was fun then. And it was like, okay.
Right.
But he never pushed me to do it.
Right.
But whenever I finally showed interest in a guitar, I was like, man, I'd really like to have a guitar. So he went and bought me like 3.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay.
And we wonder where you got your addiction
Yeah,
now.
right. So now, I just have to keep doing this over and over. And I
Yeah.
told him, I want a fiddle. So he went and bought me a fiddle or
Right.
whatever. It's like, oh, gosh. But yeah, it's
Well, he wanted to encourage it.
right.
Right.
Without
that
pushing
finally
it, he wanted to
showed.
encourage it. Right.
Yeah, and so my kids, I do the same thing. It's like my oldest has never shown any interest. I finally got him to play air guitar this week. That was the first time I've ever finally got him to let loose.
Not even Guitar Hero.
No, he wouldn't.
He
won't
wasn't old
do any
enough
of
for
that.
Guitar Hero,
Yeah.
was he?
No, but finally, like this week, we were going to school. This last week, and I had something on. I think Shinedown was playing on the radio or something. And
Right.
he just had this look on his face. He's going to school. He doesn't want. He's a 10th grader. He doesn't want to be going to school. And I'm like, I was just like, hey, I said, dude, come on, this music's good. Let it pep you up a little bit to go to school. And he's like, oh, whatever, and everything.
Right.
And so I was like, dude, you don't understand. Like this music, you can headbang to it and kind of get yourself a little pumped up for the day. Or I said, man, you can even play air drums. I said, dude, it'll like get you moving. You can play air guitar. And I was over here like this. And I was like, yeah, here, catch. And I just pretended to throw in the guitar. And I'll be dang, he actually goes. Started. I was like, all right, there you
Something.
go.
We're getting there.
We're getting
We're getting
something. I felt like it was a major win for me.
Yeah, for sure.
See, I can't play air guitar. I end up in the wrong key every time.
It's hard to finger it when you're not. Yeah, you don't feel a fretboard. But yeah,
That's going to be the clip. It's hard to finger it.
Yeah, you're going to
It's hard to finger it.
That's
Nick
right there.
Parsons.
That's the intro. That's the name of the episode right there.
Yeah.
Shit. But yeah, man, it was always around, and luckily, the guitars that were lying around weren't shit guitars. I didn't grow up with money at all. By the time that I came around, Dad had no money left. Not that he ever had tons of money to begin with.
Right.
He played nightclub gigs, and I mean, you know what that's like.
Yeah.
And you make $100, couple $100 a night.
Even
a
if
couple
you
times a year, or
Even
a
if
couple
you
times
had a
week.
big record deal back in those days, they were deals
sure.
to screw you.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you weren't going to have.
Yeah, I mean, you had to tour because if you didn't, you weren't eating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he had some decent guitars that were lying around, and eventually showed enough interest that he'd sit down with me and show me some chords, and I get frustrated as hell, and had to build calluses up and all that. But the interest was there. My younger brother picked it up too. He picked up drums and then keyboard. He plays some guitar now as well, and plays around with different bands and stuff for fun. But yeah, we started a garage band, I think in 4th or 5th grade.
Oh, wow.
We were absolutely
Way
the
over.
shittiest garage band, out there. Literally a band in the garage. I'm sure the neighbors loved us. Mom and Dad for Christmas, I remember the first Christmas I got my own guitar. And again, we grew up pretty hand to mouth. And they always tried to make Christmas real big for us, but you never really expected a lot. And we came down and Dad had bought a drum set at a pawn shop. And had a drummer buddy of his go through and rehead it and kind of get it all set. And he bought me a Fender Squire, right when Squire kind of first came out.
Yeah.
And, so they were cheap, but it was something to learn on. A little Fender amp, and we played around with that for years and years and years.
That's cool.
And really learned on that. And I played electric before I ever played acoustic, although I'm really more of a rhythm player than anything. But that was when I had my own. That was it. That was the thing that really pushed me into, So a couple of years ago, I went and bought my daughter a baby Taylor, and she's going on 9 this year, so I'm still pretty young.
Yeah.
And I'll play her and beat around with it, campfire or whatever. But I call it her guitar, and that was the first time she's like, "Oh, I have a guitar. I guess I can go play my guitar."
Very
so
cool.
I'm kind of trying to follow in that a little bit, but. Played with, really from that time on, played with bands literally my entire life. So played throughout high school, toured every summer in high school.
Yeah.
Up and down the West Coast, kind of branched into the middle of the country a little bit, but you're in high school, so how far can you really go?
Right.
And then in college, we toured every summer in college and did, started out kind of playing anthem rock, and then got more and more into kind of playing country and chicken picking and stuff like that. I'm still not much of a chicken picker. But that's when we really kind of started touring throughout the South and, Texas and Alabama and, playing juke joints and chicken wire places. And,
I have a question.
yeah.
Was your band name Nick Parsons Project?
No, but my email address is. So it actually is and has been for I don't know how.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, it is the Nick Parsons Project.
That's funny.
That's awesome. But yeah, man, we just so picked that up, and again, I mean, played chicken wire places for years and years, having beer bottles thrown, and it was the most exhilarating thing ever.
If you survived the night, it made your.
I mean,
Made your
made
day.
your blood pump, right? So yeah, man,
That's too funny.
that was kind of the impetus for doing that, and then laid it down, for a little while, just before we had kids. Just work got crazy, and wasn't playing as much, and probably I went probably 2, maybe 3 years and didn't play one gig. Rarely picked up a guitar. Was a little nervous to open the case just in case humidity had wrecked it.
Right.
Yeah.
And then finally, my wife told me, she goes, when I met you, like we were groupies. Like, we threw around and she goes, you never picked up your guitar anymore. And she goes, I just want to hear you play again. So picked it up and started kind of getting back into it and, fell back in love with it. This is probably, 14, 15 years ago. And kind of jumped back into it. So, I mean, we're still, I ever since being in Oklahoma, I've never put together another band. Just kind of played around, love playing with y'all. But it's always just been there.
Yeah.
And I've never been a big songwriter. I write a little bit, not nearly as much as y'all do. But man, I just love good music, and I love playing good music. And if there's one thing, and I don't know if Dad taught this. Again, this might be one of those genetic things. But if there's one thing I was really, really blessed with, is I have a really good ear.
Mm-hmm.
And from a pretty early age, once I learned chord structure, I could listen to any tune and tell you without ever looking at a piece of music what chords they were playing, what progressions they were playing, long before I ever knew what Nashville numbers or anything was.
Yeah.
I knew it was a 1-4-5 or whatever.
Right.
And my dad and I used to have this game. We'd drive down the road in his old Ford Ranger, listen to the radio, and we would quiz each other on what guitars people were playing. So I'd be like, hey, it's a Rickenbacker. That's a Taylor. That's a Fender. And you'd, that's a Fender, but he's playing the bridge pickup, and we'd have this, and I don't. It was fun, and I'm sure it was Dad's way of like just kind of trying to instill music without pushing it too hard, but it gave me a really good ear. So to this day, like if I hang my hat on anything on music, it's like, man, I could hear about 3 bars of a song and tell you exactly what they're playing and play along with it. And I may not be able to nail the key, the first time, but I could always tell you the progression.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's actually pretty hard to find musicians that have that type of ear.
That is very true.
Sure.
That
Funny,
is
you did
very
say something that I've been preaching to my kids whenever I do talk to them about music. It's like, hey, if you learn to play an instrument, they can't take it away from you. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
Yeah.
And it's something you'll always have, and it'll always be there for you. So even if times got really tough, I know I can take my guitar, literally go open a case somewhere, and I can sit down and make a few bucks.
Yeah.
I've done it.
I mean, sometimes,
I've
sometimes
done it.
unintentionally.
on my prodigal journey, when just before I met my wife, I took some time and sold everything I had, bought a bus pass, and traveled the country for a while.
You like to live dangerously.
Yeah.
Well,
back then it was probably maybe slightly.
only slightly. Only slightly. But I did. I ended up out in California some, and I would literally pull up on a corner, go open the guitar case and sit and pick.
Bust around for a few hours.
And I was terrible. The fact that anybody gave me anything, they probably gave me money out of feeling bad for me more so than because they were impressed with what I was doing.
You had the long hair and the beard at the time?
No, I did not.
Okay.
I did not.
So it wasn't like sympathy, like this homeless guy just trying to...
But yeah, and that is 100% true. That's one thing I love about music is there is always a place for music. You think of, actually, in some ways, music is what gets people through bad times.
Yeah.
And so if you can give somebody a good song in the worst of times, then they're going to be even more appreciative than if you give them a good song in the good times.
Yeah.
And so I've always believed that. Who was it we went and saw? Singer-songwriter, guitar player, told the story about being high and wandering down the street.
Todd Snyder.
Todd Snyder,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
We went and saw Todd Snyder, and Todd Snyder even said that from the stage. He said somebody was suing him about something, and he goes, "Okay, take it." He goes, "I've been broke before. I'll be broke again. It's not a big deal.
Right.
I've got a guitar and I've got a voice. I know I can eat dinner and have a place to sleep."
Yeah. I've never heard it said like that, but yeah, it's absolutely true, man. There's very few skills that you can develop that you can instantly put to work.
Yeah.
And not that you go into it thinking I'm going to put this to work.
Yeah.
But it's just that back pocket thing. You can be a great cook, and you may not be able to find a kitchen to cook in.
Right.
But you got a guitar with you.
You got something you can make noise on. It doesn't even really
Yeah,
matter what it
doesn't
is. You
even
can
doesn't
figure
even
it
have to
out.
be a guitar. Yeah.
One of the things I learned from Dad, really, because when he played nightclubs, he had a band for a little while, but normally it was him and another guy, and they would kind of song swap back and forth. We all do it sometimes, but because he didn't have a full band all the time, he had to be the band himself.
Right.
So he learned to play with bass walks. He learned to play with heavy rhythm. He learned to play with accent and fretboard tapping and the whole thing to make it sound really full.
Yeah.
And if I've had to overcome very many things in life, it's sometimes I play too busy because that was the way I picked it up. Like if I'm going from a G to a D, I'm walking from it, and I'm back and forth, and that rhythm's heavier, and I'm tapping, I'm doing it because I'm trying to make it sound full because that's the way I learned to play acoustic.
Yeah.
See,
And there's probably cleaner ways to play.
That's
but
a
that's what I
skill
learned.
that I would love to have. I hear music in my head,
Mhm.
so even as a kid listening to the radio, if a song was playing and you turned the radio off and you turned the radio back on before that song was done, if I wanted to, I could pick up where that song was before you turned the radio on, and I would be right in time because I hear it in my head.
Right.
It drove me nuts when people would sing songs and then they'd just skip the guitar solo, because in my head I still hear the guitar solo.
Right. Throws everything on.
Right. But I never learned to recreate that on the guitar.
You tried kazoo? It works really well.
It actually does.
Actually, I'm one hell of a kazoo player because
We might have to
I
have a
can,
kazoo
I
song
can
swap one of
hum,
these
I
nights.
can hum a
gonna say.
tune now.
I recently acquired a second one. So, thanks to
A
Kevin over
golden
here.
kazoo.
Big golden kazoo. Hey, it's louder than my original one, so thank you for that. It worked out very well.
Now I'm going to have to deal with 2 kazoo solos every song.
It's going to slip it behind you when you're not ready to fix it.
No, I've got my bagpipes.
We'll do some Allman Brothers,
Right.
kazoo harmonize.
Kazoo harmony. There we
Oh,
go.
there
That
we
would
go.
be
It's-
something.
it'll be a thing.
That we can do. That we can definitely do. That we can definitely
That's so
do.
great.
Well, how are you liking that cigar?
Hey, this is pretty smooth, man. I love this. Yeah, it's and it burns. I mean, you guys smoke. I think you draw a lot heavier than I do, but it's unbelievably even.
Yeah.
I'm not. I love cigars, but I'm not like y'all where you probably have a couple a day, on a
Light
On a
day.
normal
on a light day, right?
Yeah.
I'm probably a 3 or 4 a month guy.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh well, we've hit your limit in the last 3 days.
so last night we lit a fire pit up with the kids, and I went to my shop and pulled a cigar. My wife goes, "What the hell are you doing?" And I was like, "Want a cigar?" She goes, "Where the hell did this come from?" And I was like, "I'm not saying a word."
Yeah. Otherwise, we're getting a phone
Right?
call.
You're gonna get a phone call. No, it's very good though. So it's a hobby. I'm not looking forward to investing, as much in as I probably will end up. But you guys have set me on the right path. It's very good though. So thank you for this, Kevin.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, we got to go to a great event this week. It was your buddy that was throwing it.
Yes.
It was for one of the Boy Scouts of America,
Yeah.
The Indian Nation.
Indian Nations
so
Council.
Yeah.
So I
Were you
don't
guys
know
Boy
where
Scouts
all.
growing up?
I was not.
I was a Cub Scout and Weeblo.
Okay.
I quit right when the Boy Scouts started.
I got up through, and it's been so long now, I don't remember. You remember the thing after Tenderfoot? So you have Cub Scouts,
Yeah.
and then you have Boy Scouts, and there's all these tiers, right? So I went all the way through Cub Scouts, and when you get into Boy Scouts, I think you start off as what's called Tenderfoot. And I think I got to the next one up, but I never finished out. I don't know if I got bored with it or we ran out of money or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that was probably the reason I wasn't, because my parents just didn't have money, and so if it was an investment in anything, it's like, no, forget it. You're
Yeah.
not playing ball. You're not.
Well, you had to go buy like this specific uniform and the specific belt, and then every patch you got, you had to go buy. And I
Yeah.
remember like Mom tried to I can make that sash, and then I'd go there and my sash didn't look the same as everybody else's.
So we grew up about the same
Yeah.
because I was the same way. My dad found somebody over in West Tulsa who was a Scout fanatic who collected Scout uniforms from people who were no longer using them or who had outgrown them, and he would resell them dirt cheap. And so every Scout uniform I had was a pre-worn.
And you had a lot of patches that you never really knew what,
Never
what
heard
they
of.
meant. Yeah.
I had to remove a lot
Yeah,
of patches. I am really good with a seam ripper because I can.
That's how he earned his Girl Scout patches.
He was a Boy Scout, he was a Girl Scout, he was an Indian guy, he was everything. Sorry, I didn't mean to hijack it, but yeah, the Boy Scout. It was funny because when we got invited to that event, I had heard something about Boy Scouts. I didn't know what the thing was, but it's very cool because it was neat to kind of relive a little bit about how they do stuff. And,
Yeah, it was a cool event. I would say I was caught off guard because I wasn't expecting to go. I hadn't even heard about it, which is weird because usually if it's whiskey and cigar related, somebody in this town will be like, "Hey, this is perfect for you,"
right?
And they reach out. I didn't hear till week of, and a buddy was gracious enough to give us a bunch of tickets, and so we were able to take the three of us and 4 of our friends and just go hang out for the evening and
made some donations.
Yeah,
tried to win some prizes. Ended up making donations.
How did I not win a prize?
I don't know.
I mean, you tried.
Yeah,
you definitely tried.
I gave it my all.
I walked away with a $75 lighter.
Right.
But yeah, it was a great event. It was their first inaugural, and I think that's part of why we hadn't heard about it. Because I think the word went out amongst the Scout people, but maybe a lot of the Scout people don't know as many of the cigar people. Because we hang out with all the cigar people, and so if somebody's into cigars in Tulsa, we've probably met them at some point or another. But since it was their first inaugural, I think that's why the word hadn't got out as big as it might have. I think next year it's going to be huge. I think next year we're going to blow the walls off.
I don't know if they'll be able to do it at that same spot next year. It was pretty. When I walked in, I felt like, oh, it's kind of a little low, and then as the night went on, you realize like, oh, this is kind of wall to wall people. Yeah, and it was a very well ran. Event for as far as the food and booze and everything they provided, and the prizes and the auction stuff. I mean, it was very well done, and there wasn't this massive presentation. Some of these you go to them and you sit through a 2-hour MC on stage, and this was more of almost a networking thing.
At least if they had a 2-hour MC, we would have had some entertainment.
This is true. I mean, but we do know some MCs if they ever need a.
Right. That is true.
Yeah,
we do know one or two.
Shameless plug there. Not me, y'all.
Hey,
I think
all you got to do is sign up. We'll put you on stage.
That's funny.
Speaking of MC, this is
Oktoberfest week.
Yeah, it's kicking off for us. We're about to get really, really busy.
That's right. We officially got busy as of today.
Yeah.
The actual Oktoberfest does not open to the public until Thursday, but we have Tuesday. We have the Beermeister's Ball, which what they try to do is something as close to what Munich does as possible.
Gotcha. Kind of keep it real pure for that. Gotcha.
Exactly. Very traditional, very authentic. So there's the whole keg roll in. The Beermeister's there. They do. They have the bands play. Everything is served. It's a nice meal.
We've talked a little bit about it. I think.
I think we have.
For like $135, you get all you can eat, all you can drink. I mean,
but that's a private event. I mean, the public can't just come in and buy $135.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
They can.
It's
open to the public.
It's open to the public. It's a specialty event.
I had never heard about it. We've been going to Oktoberfest for really since we first moved to Tulsa.
Yeah.
It was the coolest thing in the world to realize like Tulsa has one of the best, if not the best, Oktoberfest in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Randomly. Yeah. Like why here? I don't know.
Because we created the chicken dance.
We created the chicken dance.
There you go.
Right there.
Somebody had to do it. Yeah.
If it was,
let's be honest, if it was going to be somewhere in America, it was going to be Tulsa. But I'd never heard of that. Have they always done the Beermeister's Ball every year?
No, that is actually a fairly new thing.
Okay,
what,
so
2 or 3 years?
This is third.
This will be the third year that we've done it. Yeah.
So it's a fairly new thing, and it has done really well every year. It gets bigger every year, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. We always did corporate night. which basically just meant my experience with Oktoberfest was you get shit-faced.
Yeah.
And wander around from tent to tent,
Yeah.
and probably end up throwing up in someone's front lawn before you find your way home. But from what I remember, it was a blast.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, they have done a great job out there of kind of balancing the Americanization of an Oktoberfest
Yeah.
with something more traditional.
Yeah.
The Beer Stube, which is one of our big tents, is more traditional. It's got the actual same type of tables and decorations and all of the kind of things they have over there in Munich.
Right.
The floor is all wood this year.
So yeah, it even has a wood floor as
really?
opposed to the dirt
That's
floor.
cool.
Yeah. And then you got the beer hall, the main beer hall, which is just a huge party from open to close.
It's like 5,000 people crammed in there.
Yeah.
It's insane.
And every year, it feels like it doubles every year.
Yeah.
It does. It does feel that way. And then we've got things like the Karbach tent, which is local breweries, and it's mostly local bands. We're playing there this Friday, but it's a party tent, so you're going to get a lot less traditional music,
Sure.
and a lot more just have a ball, kind of stuff.
Yeah. The first Oktoberfest I ever went to was actually, oddly enough, when I lived in California.
Mm-hmm.
There is I feel like it might have been in Tustin or Orange in Orange County, and they had this, what do they call it? I mean, it might have been, it's like Old World something or other.
Okay.
And they built like this little, I don't know how big this little German town
Mm-hmm.
that was basically an event center, but it was like a little German town. Like all the facades and everything looked like that. And there was like a legit little Oktoberfest
Oh, nice.
that they would throw. But it was never, I mean, there might have been 3,000 or 4,000 people there, on the biggest night they had it. So it was never anything like Tulsa.
Mhm.
But it was kind of a neat little experience. But it was very traditional.
Yeah.
I mean, very, very traditional.
Yeah.
But yeah, very, very neat. And then I did one up in Milwaukee, probably 8 years ago.
Uh-huh.
And that was very traditional too, because there's a big German, population,
Yeah.
up in the Milwaukee area.
Yeah.
And they have, I don't know if you guys have been through Milwaukee very often.
Just a couple times.
There's some
Yeah.
Germantown areas in Milwaukee that, I mean, some of the best German food you've had outside of Germany.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there. And it's all, German transplants. It's just basically, and they're all, beer halls and stuff like that, but you're in the middle of,
It's like
not
going to
really
East
small
Texas.
town USA, but yeah.
Yeah, East Texas. There's especially that southern end of East Texas.
German and Czech.
The Czech
All those,
influence.
yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, people don't realize that German Czech influence in Texas is really, kind of coming circle back into barbecue is really one of the main reasons why barbecue in Texas, maybe not main reason, but one of the bigger reasons why barbecue in Texas is what it looks like today, beyond just brisket,
Right.
is a lot of those German influences, especially with sausages and stuff like that.
I can see that.
When you look at Texas barbecue, sausage is a major component of Texas barbecue. Like probably the second, most important in Texas barbecue, and that's all comes from the German Czech influence in Central Texas.
Don't you think they could have came up with a better name than hot gut sausage, though? It
mean-
just sounds
I mean,
not
but
appealing.
it's Texas. You know what I mean? So like, what else are they going to call it?
Right.
Yeah, but man, I've it's been very. I don't know how long you guys have been, kind of involved in setting that thing up, but it's definitely something Tulsa hangs its hat on.
Absolutely.
The Oktoberfest celebration there, and one of the few things that Tulsa does that the entire town embraces. Like this is our thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's really well received and well attended, and yeah, it's a big deal around here.
Well, now I think everybody knows it goes to sponsor the Tulsa River Parks.
I don't
Which-
think people know that.
Really?
I mean,
Oh,
I knew
really?
that, but I don't think everyone knows that.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
I thought we had tried to get the word out
Yeah.
about that, but yeah.
No, but I mean, with as big as as it is in Tulsa, I think a lot of times people just know it's something we do, but
Yeah.
they don't really know. Hey, and it's a nonprofit?
So,
I know River
How's
Parks
it?
is.
Yes, it is its
So
own
it is
nonprofit, but it's run by River Parks, and the funding from it goes to River Parks.
it's the major fundraising event of the year for them. So, yeah. And if you haven't been to Tulsa, our river park system here is amazing. All the different trails and parks and the bike trails, like I can't remember how long. It's ridiculous.
Hundreds and hundreds of
Yeah.
miles of bike trails.
Yes.
And I mean, now, Gathering Place is part of River Parks, and I mean, there's just the extent of that organization of what they've been able to do. A good buddy of mine is now the head of River Parks. He's been a real good friend of mine for a while. He was the head of the Sand Springs Park.
I would say, he came from Sand Springs
Yeah,
over
Jeff
here.
Edwards.
Yeah.
And his resume is just outstanding. What he did for Sand Springs is outstanding. When
Yeah.
he had the position open up for River Parks, he had some pretty stiff competition from around the country that were applying for that job. But they knew, this guy has a love for the Tulsa area and an understanding of what, that type of, I don't know, a resource, I guess, that Tulsa has that a lot of people wouldn't, you come from Austin or Dallas or something, and, they have stuff like that. But, Jeff spent years and years developing those resources in Sand Springs. So when he came over to River Parks, man, he just fully embraced it. And it really, I don't think until he got there, it really opened my eyes to the extent that organization is.
Oh, yeah.
And how unbelievably important it is and how passionate the people are that work for it.
Yep.
It's not just a nonprofit,
One of our good buddies, Ryan Howell,
Mhm.
works for River Parks, and we just did a big thing for him. What was that, a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, it's another fundraiser
Out
called
at
Base
Turkey
Camp.
Mountain.
Yeah.
Turkey Mountain. So we got to play out there. Our band got to come back. We've played there twice now.
So you played the night
Yeah.
after I catered there.
Yes.
Yes.
So we catered for what they called the Wild Turkey fundraiser.
Yes.
Yes.
And they set up did a kind of a who's who, big tent thing, and had, I think they had bands play that night.
Yeah, they
Hey,
played
man,
about 5.
Okay, yeah. And we catered that event for probably 500 people. And that was a cool thing. I mean, they had fire pits set up there, and literally wild turkeys, walking around, and it was just nuts.
That's cool.
And then the base camp thing was at the upper lot the next day.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
And people camped out there, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's one time a year that they allow camping on site.
On site, and they also have the big yurts that you can rent for. I can't remember how much it is
I don't
for the
either.
night.
They just set them up for that event.
Yeah,
though, right?
yeah,
They
it's
don't
just for
always
that
have them
night.
out.
No.
I wish they always had them
I
out.
know that'd be cool.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Just kind of rent them and be able to go out there and stay the night.
I don't think it was until 3 years ago that I first stepped foot on Turkey Mountain, and I've been in Tulsa for 17 years.
Oh, really?
Coming from California, you're used to mountains.
Yeah.
So you always hear people talk about Turkey Mountain, you're like, all right, whatever.
It's
Yeah.
Turkey Hill.
Turkey
Turkey
Hill.
Hill, right? And it is Turkey Hill. But when you actually start,
Elevation 12.
when you start spending time out there, you realize, holy shit, man, this is a gem.
It is.
Like what
It is.
they've created. And then Jeff was the first one who runs River Parks, was the first one to kind of tell me, man, the trail system they developed, and the people that are trail runners and hikers and all that, and then the mountain bikers, the guys that set up those trails are the guys who run them and ride them every single day.
Well,
So-
Ryan is one of those guys, and Turkey Mountain is kind of his baby.
Yeah.
And I know he recently, for some reason, I want to say we now have the nation's largest natural stone stepway.
Yeah. It's
He,
what's the other? It's like you gain 4 or 5, maybe 300 or 400 feet of it. I did it 2 days ago. For
Did
the
you?
first time.
Oh, wow.
I had the afternoon off, and I was like, man, I'm just, I was driving through Tulsa Hills. I'm like, I take my kids down there, and we kind of, do some of the kid walk trails. But I've
Right.
never actually spent some time, and I went out there for a couple hours and walked it. My knees were killing me. But it's really cool. I guess they sourced all the stone from Turkey Mountain,
right?
and then they built this. It probably takes you 15, 20 minutes to walk up these steps
Yeah,
that they built, and it goes from basically the lower lot all the way up to the upper lot, and it's beautiful.
that's what I've heard.
Yeah.
I don't do stairs if I can avoid it. So
I would avoid it.
I
Go,
have not
going
tried
up
it,
wasn't
but-
that bad.
Yeah.
Going down that hurt.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. I think if you're over the age of 30, you're going to feel going down on it.
Yeah, back in college, back in the 90s, we rode out there mountain bikes, but there were people come from Colorado to ride there back then.
Really?
Even back
So
then.
I assume they had a trail system back then on Turkey Mountain.
there was a lot
Yeah.
of miles out there.
There's been trails out there for as long as I can remember.
And all that's nonprofit.
Right.
The land, everything is all
Yes.
nonprofit.
Yes.
And like you said, that this being a big fundraiser for it, man, it takes some money to support
And maintain
land and maintain trails and cut new trails and
Yes.
the crew. And honestly, the amenities there are pretty top notch too. Like the bathrooms are nice, the parking lots are nice, the lighting where there needs to be lighting is really nice.
Agreed.
They're building that new center there.
Yeah, they
just
are about
announced
to
that.
expand it one direction. I can't remember which
They
direction.
just recently got a bunch more funding, and they're going to add a whole bunch more miles of trail.
Yep.
They're also going to create kind of a visitor center that also will be kind of an operations center for part of the River Parks
good for them.
crew.
They're going to move all their offices there on the side.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the first time they ever had offices on one of their parks.
It's a great place to hang your hat and to put that.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
It's neat too. I was talking to a buddy of mine this last week. There's not a lot. We're blessed with Gathering Place being, and obviously Gathering Place is just still to be mind blowing. One, that it's free.
Yeah.
And two, that it's just as bad. I mean, I've been to Gathering. My wife and kids go there all the time. I've been to Gathering Place probably a dozen times, and I bet I've only seen 30, 40% of it.
Oh yeah.
It's massive, and there's so much that goes into it.
Absolutely.
But it's there's very few places that you can go and you actually still feel like you're in nature.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a hunter, and there's these places around the country, and especially here in Tulsa, called they're wildlife management areas. They call them WMAs. And during hunting season, it's where people that don't have land, they can go and it's public hunting,
Right.
and it'll be 600 acres or 3,000 acres or something of basically wild woods, and you can go in there and you can hunt them, and they're scattered around. But unless you're in the hunting ecosystem, most people don't even know they exist.
Right.
They're managed by the state,
Yeah.
and that's where game wardens and they kind of all come into play on it. And Corps of Engineers has some plug in on that. But if you don't know about those, there's not really a place in the city or a city adjacent that you can just go to where you don't feel like, okay, I'm just in a manicured park.
Right.
So to be able to walk out there and you feel like, oh, I'm in the woods.
Yeah.
Like, this is like you could get lost out here. People get lost out there. And it's not that I don't know how many acres they have. It's not gigantic.
It's sizable. I can't remember exactly how many it is.
It's not 100 acres. Like it's a lot bigger than that. But,
Yeah.
But
But I
it's
can't
neat
remember.
to have a spot where you can literally just kind of go lose yourself in the woods for a little bit. If you want to take a walk for 8 hours,
Yeah.
and really not see anybody but the occasional hiker, walking next to you,
Or a Bigfoot.
or a Bigfoot.
Yeah.
You never know.
We have had Bigfoot spottings out there.
Have you really?
Yeah.
Yeah, he came.
Yeah.
He actually came
showed
walking
up.
right through one of our shows one night
Did
when
he?
we were playing
Yeah.
out there.
Yep.
Well,
Well,
he likes
That's crazy,
music,
man.
man.
Yeah.
he did.
What can I
did.
say?
He was a fan. Oh, well, we probably ought to wrap this thing up. I'm getting toward the end of my cigar.
Same.
So, Nick, usually at this point we ask people if they have any social media they want to share
Sure.
or something they want to
Plug.
plug or tell
Whatever
our
you
audience
wanna-
about.
Well, let's go ahead and plug Oktoberfest more. I don't know how long you guys post these ahead of time or anything. But,
Well, it'll probably get posted about the time Oktoberfest is over.
well, then y'all
Yeah.
missed out on Oktoberfest. But
But-
put it on your calendar next year.
You know something they can catch?
What's
'Cause
that?
I know this will happen before the second weekend of it, but out on Turkey Mountain, they're doing the Haunted Trail.
Oh, yeah,
That's right.
They do that for the Halloween season.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It'll actually start this weekend. They'll do Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and they have one of the trails all decked out, ready. It's like an outdoor scare house or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think they have kind of a. If I remember right, they have like a kids version of it. So
Not quite as scary.
Yeah, not quite
The
as
one
scary.
I
They
could
have
go
kind of
down.
the adult version where you can go. Get
They don't have
a little
people
one
jump
scared.
out at you or anything,
Right.
do they?
I don't believe so. I think that's probably against insurance regulations.
They Knott's Berry Farm in Southern California. Did you ever when you lived
Yeah,
out
I
there?
was
Did
a
you ever go
kid,
there? They had an event called Knott's Scary Farm. And
Yeah.
It was like it might have been the whole month, but it was at least a week or two before Halloween. And they would literally hire people to jump out at you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And now I'm thinking you get shanked.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know if they still do it. I doubt they do.
I don't know. Last year we went for spring break. We went down to San Antonio and went to Six Flags, and they had they called it like Scare Fest or something
Yeah.
like that. And yeah, man, they had all these steampunk. It was a theme
Actors
and all that,
right.
and they would, but yeah, they'd come out of nowhere, and I was like, man, they're lucky somebody getting shot
Popped in the face.
right?
Yeah, especially in Texas.
Yeah.
Guys
Yeah.
walking around with AR-15s.
No
down
kidding.
there.
No kidding.
So,
Well, where can they find you online?
Yeah. So really,
They know your email address now.
They got my email address. You can always hit me on Gmail there. No, I'm just about everywhere. Every piece of social media is just Nick Cooks Barbecue. NICK Cooks BBQ is where Instagram and LinkedIn and Threads, and I ditched Twitter a while ago, but all that good stuff. But yeah, you can hang out with me there. We post a lot of mainly barbecue content. I do some music stuff on there, but mainly barbecue content and a lot of videos, a lot of recipes, a lot of just kind of fun hangout, neat stuff.
He
Very
actually
cool.
does some really good cooking videos.
We can do them every now and then.
Yeah, man, I'm telling you, I love watching those things.
It's fun. I'm a teacher not by trade. I did teach for a couple of years. Some people were dumb enough to hire me to teach high school for a few years. And looking back, I'm like, you're the stupidest people I've ever met in my life. Man, I taught high school ethics for a couple of years, and would like Friday mornings, and we would go out and get shit faced Thursday night, and I'd show up hungover as hell on a Friday morning and teach high school ethics. But I'm a teacher by trade, so a lot of the content we post online is teaching people how to cook barbecue. And I had a little bit of family history of barbecue, but it wasn't one of those like years and years of crazy like hog cooking or whatever.
Right.
So I had to really teach myself a lot of that stuff. So I like we do barbecue classes and seminars and stuff every now and then. Really try to teach people like, hey, jump into this, and it's not as hard as you think it is, especially nowadays with pits that are electric buttons and this and that. I mean, you can
Trigger
jump into
grills
it.
where you push a button and it does
You
its own
jump
thing.
into it easy now, and you got enough YouTube content to keep you busy for decades.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But yeah, you can track me down online at Nick Parsons Barbecue and catch up all the fun stuff we do.
Very cool, very cool.
About you?
As usual, CR Parsons Comedian or CR Parsons Comedy on all the social medias. You can email me directly at booking@crparsons.com, or you can email the Smokey Guys at thesmokeyguys@gmail.com.
And as usual, find me at KP Troubadour on all the social medias, even Twitter.
Do you tweet? Are you a twatter?
I really don't tweet. I read a lot of it. Yeah.
You hold the
It's
branding,
there.
but beyond
I hold it. Yeah, exactly. I've had some celebrities tweet me, which is really cool. I'm like, I don't know how you figured out how to do it. I think it's by accident. Really, I'm probably trying to find somebody else and end up tweeting me. But yeah, at KP Troubadour. And if you want to follow our music stuff, at Kevin Price Band. But most importantly, like and subscribe and hit the little bell thing so it'll notify you when we post these things. That's what you'll want to do so you can see your own episode.
Absolutely.
And
you guys
do
post
us-
them everywhere? I mean, Spotify, Apple, all that? Or what's your...
He
YouTube
does it.
only.
What is it?
YouTube only.
Even better. One
YouTube
spot,
only
keep
right
it
now.
easy.
Do us a favor, make a comment. That helps the algorithm, helps this get out to other people. As you know, smoking content on YouTube is not preferred, so they don't spread it as much as they do other stuff. So your comments, your likes, and subscribes actually make a difference.
For sure. Until then, stay
Stay
smoky.
smoky.